Yes.
You don't have to be very quick,
Yes.
10 minutes, and then we go to about 9:45, 9:50. We can take over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
So I haven't really got that much time to talk, have I? Then that's okay.
then we give them about 10-minute break,
Oh goodness, you don't give me much time. Okay, I'll see what I can do
and
here
then we'll start right at 10 o'clock. And
for
I'll
the
do
Sunday school.
no, Sunday school's at 9.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's my school. Oh my god, the itinerary had it reversed. I'm sorry. That's
Okay.
more what you done was
Yes.
more logical. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sunday school at 9. All my classes have been invited to come here.
Oh, thank
Start
you.
at 9. And then the regular service starts at 10.
Okay.
And we have a couple of opening songs, and then I'll bring you up at about 15 after 10.
Sure.
And then
Okay.
you go as long as you want that service. I don't care because from there they're
this one too. All right, folks, if you all come on in and have a seat, we want to go ahead and get started with the Sunday School Hour. We've only got so much time, so we want to get you in here today. And I know we're going to have some people that'll be wandering in over the next few minutes coming in, but we want to go ahead and get started today, all right? We thank you for coming and being a part of this. And it's a real pleasure today and a real honor to have Dr. Jonathan Sarfati here with us today. And so we are so glad that he's here to come today, and he's come to minister to us and to dispel some myths and to give some truths. And so we're excited about that, all right? So if you all come in, we're going to go ahead and have a word of prayer, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Children, if you'll sit there and kind of keep quiet, okay? I know we've got several young people. All right, let's have a word of prayer and we'll get started. Father, we love you and thank you for your goodness and your mercy. We thank you for your grace and love and the way you watch over us. I pray you'll bless this Sunday school hour that we have. Father, may we be blessed by it. And Father, we just give you praise even now for what you're going to do in the lives of our people. We give you praise, honor, and glory. In Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said, Amen. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Jonathan Sarfati. Please come on up, sir.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me here and for getting up at a Sunday morning to hear about dinosaurs and why they're important. And also, I'll give you guys a chance to ask me some questions on anything you like about the Bible and creation, evolution, sort of stuff. So I'll leave some time for that. Now, we are an equipping ministry. We actually go to churches to try to equip the church and the home for why we can trust the Bible right from the start. And it's a start that's often attacked most in the secular world. But the thing is, if you can believe the first verse of the Bible, you can believe anything else. If you doubt the first verse, then nothing else makes any sense. Now, just to let you know, there are some places that we can go for some free information that we have, and that's on our website, which is creation.com. Can you remember creation.com? It shouldn't be too hard to remember. Hope not, anyway. But one place to find out, we actually have a free email newsletter called the Infobites. And what these will do is they will answer questions that are in the media. For instance, the latest missing link they discovered. Well, just remember they found one last year too, right? And the year before that, You know, they don't believe the ones I was taught at school. They don't believe those anymore. But they hope you've forgotten all that. Okay. And for instance, other topical things that we do, like the repeal of Roe v. Wade. I wrote a big article about that when it happened, which is a glorious day. There's still more work to be done. But one way you can be connected is our free email newsletter, and we promise not to spam you or to sell or give your address to any third party. Okay, we'll protect your privacy. But some nice men are going to come around and give you the sign-up sheet. Just put your name, please, and your email, because it's an email newsletter, but also your postcode, because what that does is tell you if there's a speaker in your area. Go ahead and pass, guys. Thanks for your patience. You pass these around, please. Go ahead. So name, address, and postcode, and that will actually tell you a creation speaker in your area. So go ahead and pass, please. Thank you. And one of the things you might like, we've got a nice book table out there, a lot of different things which are resources to help you do this. And the Bible tells you we're supposed to have a reason for the hope that is in you. We're supposed to be prepared with reasons and answers for what we believe. The Christian faith is not a blind faith. And that includes a lot of different things. People have questions about where the water in the flood went to. Okay, I can answer that very quickly, actually. You know, it's in the ocean today. The earth is 70% covered by water, and you know, if you could flatten the mountains down and raise the ocean bottoms up so everything was totally smooth, the water in the ocean would cover the whole earth to about 2 miles deep. So there is plenty of water to cover the earth, just have to make the surface more even. Another question that gets asked, especially if you like science fiction, are we alone in the universe? What's another question? Carbon-14 dating, does that prove millions of years? I'd say it actually proves the opposite. Because carbon-14 decays so quickly that if you find carbon-14 in anything, you know it can't be more than about 100,000 years old. It certainly couldn't be millions of years old if carbon-14 is still present. And one place you can go to for that is one of the books we have on this table. It's called the Creation Answers book, okay, which answers 60 questions. And also as part of a starter pack here, which actually gives you a free DVD there, so that's pretty good. Now, when it comes to things like dinosaurs, and let's face it, dinosaurs are usually combined with millions of years. Kids often learn about the millions of years, supposedly, because they love dinosaurs. But in fact, dinosaurs should be used for the opposite, that they actually point to a biblical time frame. A lot of things about dinosaurs make best sense out when you accept the Bible as a real history book of the universe. And one thing which is always important to do is to define your terms. Let's face it, when the cults come to your door, they may be using the same language you use, but they have totally different meanings of the words. That's how they suck you in, because they've got different meanings of the same words. So I want to define a dinosaur. And a dinosaur is quite distinctive in having these column-like legs. You see, that's why they walk vertically. It's they're often very fast runners because their legs are vertical, unlike crocodiles and lizards where the legs are sprawled out. So the crocodiles and lizards are not dinosaurs. Neither were those flying reptiles or the sea reptiles. And also, what happens, the thigh bone here, the femur has this little part here, it's called the process, and what that does is get into the hip bone, and the hip bone is unique, it has a hole there. We have a cup shape there. That's it's a fancy term, acetabulum, which is just Latin for little vinegar cup, because most animals have a cup there. We have a cup there as well, okay? But dinosaurs were unique and they have a hole there. So if you have a hole there, it's a dinosaur, plus that vertical leg. You see, if it doesn't have that, it's not a dinosaur. And the thing is, where do you go for information? Well, the Bible is the history book. I mean, it's got theology and morality for sure, but it's all bound up in the history. I mean, the resurrection is obviously vital for the Christian faith, but it had to happen in history. Otherwise, the Christian faith is in vain. And the thing is, the Bible tells you when dinosaurs existed. You have to use some logical deduction, but it does tell you. Like dinosaurs were part of the beasts of the earth, created on day 6 of creation week. And then also on creation week, God made humans. And when you look at Genesis 2, which is more detailed account of the creation of humans, we see it's one of each. Adam made from the dust, Eve made from his rib. But Genesis 1 is the summary outline of the whole. Genesis 2 focuses in on the ultimate, the culminating point of creation. One was creation of humans in God's image. Genesis 2 gives you more detail. The point is, when you get these together, it shows that dinosaurs and humans lived together. You can't escape that. That's what the Bible tells you. They must have lived at the same time. Now, one pushback then is, well, if dinosaurs and humans lived at the same time, why don't we find the fossils together? But then push back in return say, just because things aren't fossilized together, does it prove they didn't live together? Well, I'd say not, because if you look at these creatures here, in the foreground is a fish called the coelacanth, and that was meant to have died out with the dinosaurs about 66 million years ago, because of where we find the fossils. Now, in the background, there's a whale. Now, coelacanths, we know, are alive today. They thought they'd gone extinct, but they found them alive today. So coelacanths and whales live together in the sea, but they're never found fossilized together. So just because things live together, there's no guarantee they will be fossilized together. Because a fossil record is not a record of age. It's a record of burial. And most of that burial was by the flood of Noah's day, which covered the whole earth. And the thing is, the flood's going to bury certain things together which may not have lived together. Like, for instance, dinosaur fossils are often found with creatures that clearly lived in water. Dinosaurs were mainly land creatures, but they're found with things lived in water. But that's easily explained if you have a flood washing them into a basin and burying that together. But maybe coelacanths and whales lived in different parts of the ocean, so were never buried together. I think humans try to avoid dinosaurs, and therefore they were not buried together with dinosaurs. But dinosaurs lived near the water's edge, and therefore would be buried near creatures that lived in the water, even though they didn't live in the water. Now, certainly the fossil record shows dinosaurs existed. We find the bones. Some were really huge. You see here? Here's a very big one. This is about head high of a 4-story building. That's big, right? And you look at some scale here. Here's a human for scale. The humans are quite tiny compared to some of the big ones. Giraffe is the biggest animal today. The tallest, not the biggest. The biggest is the elephant, but the tallest is the giraffe, okay? But the Brachiosaurus is much, much taller and much, much heavier. Maybe 50 times heavier. Because the giraffe is quite slender. This is very stocky. But the whale is bigger than the dinosaurs. It's interesting. Now, there are a lot of design features that are needed for large size. You can't just scale things up as you see in the science fiction movies. The science doesn't work that way. It can't be done that way. There are different things that small creatures and big creatures need. Like, for instance, giraffe. How do you get blood from here to here? This is very old. 20 feet high, maybe 18 to 20 feet high. That's big. How do you get blood? Push it uphill. That's quite hard to do, right? So how does it manage? Well, it has to have a blood pressure of 300 over 180. Now, if you're checking your blood pressure, you know that's got to be it would be deadly for humans. I mean, 180 is a hypertensive emergency. Go to the hospital. It's dangerous. We should be about 120 over 80, right? The top number is when the heart's pushing, and the bottom number is when the heart's relaxing. So 300 over 180, that's a lot of pressure, which means a powerful heart. Okay, question then, what happens when the giraffe bends over to drink? Why doesn't it blow its brains out? It's a problem. Scientists have been working this out for decades. I think they've found the answer is there's some veins in my neck, and what happens when the giraffe bends down, the blood pools in the veins, doesn't go to the heart, so therefore the heart has less to push upon, so the blood pressure is automatically reduced. And when the giraffe raises the head, the blood goes back into the heart, it's immediately pushed up to the brain. So you know what it's like, you're lying down, you get up too quickly, you feel a bit lightheaded, you know what it's like, right? That's because the blood hasn't quite reached your brain yet, you're a bit blood deprived, okay? But it doesn't happen to the giraffe. So this is an automatic blood pressure regulator that a very tall animal needs, which we don't need. Now, when you think of the Brachiosaurus, maybe 3 times higher, its blood pressure would have been about 750. So it means what sort of system they have, that's the sort of thing. We know they must have had some incredible designs here, but we only have the bones, so I can't tell you exactly what it was. We just know it must have had something. I'm just trying to tell you that the dinosaurs, which were very big, had to have certain designs that smaller creatures don't have to have. So what was the biggest dinosaur? Any ideas? So I call out if you want. Go ahead, yes, sir. Brachiosaurus is a very big one. I think that's a very good answer. As far as animals with a complete skeleton, I think that was the biggest. Tyrannosaurus rex is a good answer for the meat eaters. It's one of the probably biggest meat eaters. But back there, yes, sir? Megalodon's a shark. Yeah, but I think that may have been the biggest fish in the sea, okay? That's a good answer for the biggest fish, Megalodon. Yeah, I wouldn't want to meet one of those. Yes, sir? Tell me. Diplodocus is actually a very long one. That probably would be the longest from a complete skeleton. That's a good answer as well. Yes, good answer. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Sorry? I can't hear you. Sorry, young fellow. Sorry, ma'am. Well, Brachiosaurus is a good answer because that's, I think, one of the biggest we have from a complete skeleton. I think Diplodocus is the longest from a complete skeleton. But see, here's some examples of some claims, okay? Amphicelius is off the scale, how big that was. Supposedly, 200 feet long, so that would be bigger than a blue whale. If this thing was real, so you're talking about 120 tons. But the thing is, you have to ask often, what is all this based on? So what I got here, the black part here is the reconstructed dinosaur. Here's a human for scale here, okay? But what do they find? The white part is what they actually found. That's what they found. You want to tell me that they know how big the neck was and the tail was and the leg was when they only found a single bone? Now, as someone had said Diplodocus, that's good. Look, you've got most of the skeleton of Diplodocus. That's a good answer, because we've got all of it. And Brachiosaurus, we've got things like a similar creature called Sarfati. We've got most of the skeleton. But when it comes to the Amphicelius, we've got nothing, only one bone. And a lot of these other things, we know they're big dinosaurs, but we haven't got much of the bone, you see. And that's the sort of thing to ask when they talk about the latest missing link. It's often good to know what have they actually found. To compare the reality with what they try to reconstruct. Here is the bone here. I'll show you the bone. It's actually a partial bone. It's not even a full bone. It's a partial bone that's been lost. So we can't actually go back and check and remeasure and see if it was right, okay? But there were some things. This is the big one, which we have a lot of the skeleton, but these are skeletons of different creatures, though, different specimens. So there's uncertainty, but see, this might have been a big creature, maybe bigger than Brachiosaurus. As a Brachiosaurus, we've found, got the whole skeleton. This thing, we've got reconstructions from different specimens. That's a big one, though. Maybe the biggest one where we've got reliable remains. Here's another one called Dreadnoughtus. And one thing about Dreadnoughtus, they said, here's a human here. Okay, so this tail's 30 feet long, and the discoverer said this is a 30-foot long weaponized tail because you can tell from these bones here, these processes, they call them, they attach very powerful muscle. So you can think of a muscular 30-foot long weapon. That's what that was. You see, here's a human for scale. You see how thick and muscular this was. Now the question then is, are there dinosaurs in the Bible? I'd say yes, there are, but the word isn't there, but the concept is. There are quite a few words that are not in the Bible, but we know the Bible teaches them. One word that's not in the Bible. But the thing is, the concept is teaching. But the thing is, when you think of the word dinosaur, when was it invented? You see, the King James Bible, 1611, so that's 200 plus years before the word Bible was invented. So of course the King James is not going to have a word that didn't exist. Not possible. Now the word dinosaur was invented by Sir Richard Owen, 1841. It means terrible lizard. It's from the Greek. And he was an opponent of Darwin. He was one of Darwin's strongest opponents. In fact, Darwin had a lot of opponents in the scientific community. He was one of the leading scientists, and he rejected Darwin. Darwin had some support in the Church of England, sorry to say. So there was a religion versus science battle, but it's the opposite way of what you might think. A lot of the scientists oppose evolution on scientific grounds, and some in the church unfortunately accepted Darwin. But the thing is, dinosaur is a modern word. So of course we're not going to find it in the Bible, but we do have other things. Like for instance, the book of Job may have been the earliest completed book in the Bible. Okay, now the thing is, Genesis starts from creation. So Genesis goes to the very beginning, right? But it goes up to, say, to Joseph. Job may have been around Abraham or Isaac. So it was finished before Genesis was finished. But the thing is, in Job, we have God giving him a creation lesson, and we know what these animals are. These are not in dispute, what these animals were. Then you get to Job 40, what do we have? We have this behemoth thing. What is a behemoth? It's not an English word. The problem is the translators didn't know what behemoth meant. Yeah, questions at the end, okay? If that's okay, I'll do questions at the end. Okay, the thing is, behemoth is a word that means beasts, plural. Behemah means one beast. Behemoth means more than one beast. So it's a plural term, so that's confusing. Why is it plural, but it's referring to one thing? Because what it means is the beast of beasts. So it's the greatest creature God had made. That's the impression we get from the word. But the translators didn't really know what it meant, so they left the Hebrew alone. Okay, but the thing is, he's a plant eater, and he very strong creature, but it tells you he moves his tail like a cedar. Now, what's a cedar? It's a very big tree even. Now, when the Bible compares things to cedars, it's telling you how amazing and majestic the man or the thing is. I mean, King Solomon used cedars from Lebanon because they're the biggest trees around. So it's a tree, you're right, but it's one of the biggest trees in the area. So that's why it would be used as a symbol of how massive something is. Now, some study Bibles tell you the behemoth is an elephant, but here's an elephant. Is that a tail like a cedar? A bonsai cedar, maybe, okay? And another candidate is the hippopotamus, but here's a hippo tail. So maybe not. Now, what about something else? What about this weaponized tail, 30 foot long? Maybe that's a tail like a cedar. That makes sense. If it's something like this, a tail like cedar makes sense, but not if it's an elephant or a hippo. Only creatures like that had tails that you compare with a cedar. Now, what about Leviathan? Leviathan was not a dinosaur. Leviathan probably was a giant crocodile called Deinosuchus. And in fact, it's an armored crocodile. See, here's the biggest crocodile today. Here's a human for scale. So this is a big creature. But the point, it tells you that harpoons and barbs are not very effective against this creature. And that would apply to an armored crocodile. It had armor plates, has a bony plate in the skin. They're called osteoderms if you want the fancy name. But the point is a giant, fearsome armored crocodile makes the best sense of what Leviathan was. So not a dinosaur. You see his legs are sprawling. It's not a dinosaur. That's the answer to Leviathan, because you'll ask me that anyway. If I didn't answer, you'd ask me anyway. But here's some interesting things. For instance, in modern time, relatively modern times, this looks like a stegosaur to me. But 800 years old. Not millions of years old. Or the dragons. The dragons, I think, may have been what we would now call dinosaurs, but the Bible talks about dragons. A lot of cultures talk about dragons and encounters with humans, and that might explain why dinosaurs became extinct, because humans hunted them. Because humans would beat the dragons eventually because they have weaponry and intelligence, and they can make traps, fire, poison, okay? Now think about, 200 years ago, Moby Dick, thereabouts, okay, the whale with wooden sailing ships and handheld harpoons and almost wiped out the whales. Can I ask the question at the end, please? Just so, that's the best idea. Otherwise I'll never finish, sorry. So they had handheld harpoons, wooden ship, and yet they almost wiped the whales out. And whales had home turf advantage being in the sea. They were bigger than dinosaurs, had bigger brains, so more intelligence, and yet humans could beat the whales. If humans could beat whales, they could beat dinosaurs too. Now think of, say, the Chinese calendar. All these different animals. We know what 11 of them are. The dragon seems to be just an ordinary animal. For most of Chinese history, the dragon was just another animal. In about the last couple of cycles, it's a 12-year cycle. You see the 12-year cycle? In the Chinese calendar, it goes clockwise, okay. But in recent years, people want to have their kids born on dragon years. Let's say the last 2 or 3 cycles, though. Most of the time, dragon is just another animal. But I think the dragon is what the ancient Chinese called a dinosaur. Now, the word, of course, is not dragon. The word is long. And it's interesting, the word for dinosaur in modern Chinese is konglong, which means terrible dragon. So the Chinese connect the dragons to the dinosaurs. In fact, when Chinese scientists discover a dinosaur, they often call it something long, while Westerners call it something saurus. They call it something long. And here's some other things. All these different dragons that people have found which seem to be dinosaurs. So what happened to dinosaurs then? Well, I think the flood wiped out a lot of them. The fact that we find fossils is evidence of the flood, actually. And I'll explain that next time in the main service. But I mean, just think about this. Have you ever seen fossil roadkill? No, to get a fossil, you have to bury it really quickly. And look at these fossils here. These were fossilized in the middle of a fight. This is what the evolutionists think these dinosaurs were doing. They were fighting to the death, and they were fossilized in this fight position. You see, he's biting off the claws on the forelimb, and he's got his claw dug into the neck there. So yeah, it's a fight to the death. It's a raptor, yes, it's a velociraptor here. By the way, Jurassic Park did not show you Velociraptor. They called it Velociraptor, but it wasn't a Velociraptor. It was actually something called Deinonychus, because Velociraptor is quite tiny. So they called it Velociraptor because it sounds scary, you see, but it wasn't one of those. Okay, so a lot of things are wrong with Jurassic Park and world, okay. Another thing is, think about dinosaur footprints. I mean, if you left a footprint outside, how long would it last? Millions of years? 1 year? Maybe a few hours. I think you're right. I think you're correct. But this is back in my home country of Australia. They found some dinosaur footprints here, and they had to lift up the rock to uncover the footprints. 60 tons of the overburdened rock was lifted up, 3,000 plus footprints. But as soon as they were lifted up, the footprints started to wear away. And so they built a shed over them. That wasn't enough. So now they're inside the conservation building that controls temperature and humidity, stops running water, running animals, to try and protect the footprints, which are now in rock, but they're still wearing away. Here is the building from the outside. But the thing is, when the footprints were made, they must have been made in softer stuff, right, to leave the impression. So, and yet they won't tell me that the layer above them is millions of years younger than the layer of the footprints. So how come the footprints lasted for millions of years before being buried? Doesn't make sense. What makes sense is that the animals were running away, leaving footprints, and then the next layer buried the footprints, and then caught up with the dinosaurs on higher ground. This is something we also see a lot. It doesn't matter what animal you're talking about. We always find the footprints down here, and the animal that could have made them up here. But animals don't live millions of years, right? Which means there can't be much time between when the footprints was laid and the animal was buried. But what does make sense is they're running away from the rising waters, leaving the footprints, and the footprints are buried, and then the flood catches up with the dinosaurs on higher ground and buries them too. So that's why we have the footprints down here and the animals up here. Happens over and over again. Another thing they've found is soft tissue in dinosaur bones. And even things like DNA and proteins. Animal proteins are found in dinosaur bones, but real chemistry shows they can't possibly last for millions of years. So I'll let the main discoverer speak for herself about this. This is soft and stretchy blood vessels and even blood cells. And here she is on 60 Minutes.
Mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this and you think, what? You
I didn't want to tell anybody.
that you'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million.
Hang on, the rules of science say it can't even be 1 million years old. I mean, don't they tell us trust the science? But maybe we should be trusting the science and that these aren't really millions of years old, which is what the Bible would tell you. They're more like, the fossils are more like 4,500 years old, the time since the flood. That's what the science is telling us here. So a lot of different things have been found. But the thing is, okay, what happened to the dinosaurs? Since humans saw dinosaurs more recently, like Job, the Chinese culture, so some of them must have survived the flood. I mean, even though the dinosaur fossils we see are the result of the flood, how could they survive? Well, the answer is the Ark of Noah that Noah built with God's instructions. No, not that stupid thing, please. That's a horrible thing. If you show that Ark to kids, you're telling the kids the Bible's just a fairy story. Please don't do that. The Bible's a history book. It's real. And there's no reason you can't tell even the young people how big the Ark was using age-appropriate language. For instance, here's the dimension of the Ark, okay? It tells you how big it was. Yeah, cubit. What's a cubit? Well, this is a cubit here. Elbow to the fingertip, right? Now, okay, how long was a cubit? Depends on how big the person is, but mine's maybe 19 inches. Okay, well, let's say 18 inches. So 300 by 50 by 30, what does that mean? Well, let's draw it out for you. See, it's longer than a football field. And it's wide enough to block 6 lanes of the interstate. And as tall as a 4-story building, okay? So that's how big this thing was. It's not a tiny little overgrown bathtub with our giraffe neck sticking through the chimney and the animals happy and smiling when the world's being destroyed, okay? Here's a humans for scale. You see what I mean? This is a big vessel. Now, the biggest things on the road you see today are semi-trailers, right? They clog up all the lanes. Not supposed to drive in the left lane. They do anyway. They don't care. You know, it's like they're passing another one, and it's sort of like this. Clogs everything up. They're not supposed to do that. But the point is, the semi-trailers are what they use to transport animals. For instance, it would hold 300 sheep over 100 pounds each one of these. That's a lot of animals. And the Ark would have the volume of 340 of these. Okay, think about it. When you're blocked by the semi-trailers on the road, you should think the Ark was 340 times bigger. So the Ark could hold 100,000 sheep-sized animals. And most animals are smaller than a sheep, you realize. I mean, think of the smallest birds and the small rodents. Most are smaller than a sheep. Okay, and also the Ark was incredibly stable. In fact, they worked out that it could stand 500-foot high waves without being toppled. But they used computer modeling and scale models, and the 500-foot waves could not topple this thing. That's how God designed it to be incredibly stable. It was a very stable box shape. Didn't have any silly things coming out like tails or masts, right? Because often what happens is wooden sailing ships are a problem because the wind catches the mast, and the mast has a lever and can topple, you see. But this had nothing to catch, you see. So it's just a barge that had to float. It's just a very good ratio. So what went on the Ark then? See, 2 by 2, as means male and a female. The 2 by 2 is how they went on board, 2 at a time. Now, there are 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean animals. Most animals were clean. But also, what went on the Ark, okay? See, it's more than species. Forget about species, really, okay? But also think about things like doves were on the Ark. We know Noah sent one, right? But jellyfish weren't because they're in the sea. You don't need to rescue sea creatures. And insects weren't on the Ark too, because only animals that breathe through nostrils were on the Ark. Insects don't breathe through nostrils. They breathe through holes in the side. So invertebrates were on the Ark. Only land vertebrates were on the Ark. Vertebrates are animals with backbones. So no congressman. Dolphin wasn't on the Ark because it's a sea creature. This was on the Ark, though. But also, the kind is much bigger than a species, because this is a hybrid. This is actually, lions and tigers are the same kind because they have babies together. In fact, you can actually trace tigers to pussycats. So a tiger and pussycats can't have babies together, but a tiger can have babies with a lion, them a leopard, then a smaller cat, smaller cat, smaller cat. You can trace the line from pussycat to tiger. So one cat kind on the ark probably, one dog kind that includes wolves. I mean, wolves can have babies with dogs, with some dogs. And so can jackals. Okay, so it's one dog kind, one horse kind. I'll just show you what I'm talking about here. See, here's an example. Kama is a camel and a llama, so they're one created kind. Beefalo, to the buffalo, are the same kind as cattle. Okay, zonkey, guess what that is? Very right, yes. And it's always the first one is a male, so zebra is a male and a female donkey. Okay, like if it's a tigon, would be a male tiger and female lion. The liger is male liger, female tiger. Male lion, female tiger. Another one for you, zorse. Okay, geep is a pig and boar. Okay, pizzly bear, you know what that means, of course. Pizzly and polar bear and grizzly. Okay, this wasn't on the ark, that's a hybrid too. A killer whale and dolphin. Okay. Now, the thing is, how many were on the ark? I think the kind was bigger than a species. I think that's wrong. But even so, the ark could hold it. If even there's one of every pair of every species, the ark could do it. But I don't think it was. I think it's more likely to be the genus, which is a bigger, because one genus has different species in it. Maybe 16,000. But I think the kind, in many cases, is as big as the family, which would mean only 2,000 animals were on board. So not as many animals as people think as there were. But also, how do you get the big dinosaurs on the ark? Well, the answer is they weren't big when they went on. See, even the big ones started life as little ones, and they're no longer than a football. But also, they went through a growth spurt. They can look at the growth rings on dinosaur bones, and every dinosaur they looked at went through the same growth pattern, you see. So they had this very slow growth to start with, and they shot up here and then leveled off. So for instance, the Apatosaurus, a very big dinosaur, say 25 to 30 tons here, but at 4 years old, he's only 1 ton or so. So maybe God is the one who brought the animals to Noah, because God said the animals will come to you. So somehow God is bringing the animals to Noah. So he would take a 4-year-old one on. So a year later, he's not much bigger. And after he comes off the ark, then he shoots up. And that would apply to all the dinosaurs. So that's the answer to how the dinosaurs fit on the ark. They weren't very big when they went on. Now, what about dinosaur extinction? Well, I think humans are the best explanation of dinosaur extinction. There are other things as well. But evolutionists have their problems, like the junkie theory, which is narcotic plants evolved. And the plant eaters got stoned, and then the meat eaters didn't have any to hunt. And you have the constipation theory, which says that the low roughage plants evolved, they got indigestion, okay. The most popular one is the meteorite theory, but the problem is, why didn't the meteorite wipe out the crocodiles? I mean, dinosaurs, they claim, ruled the earth for 180 million years. That's what they claim. I don't believe the dates, but this is what they claim. So why were dinosaurs wiped out but not crocodiles? And also, why weren't frogs and moths and flowering plants wiped out? They should have been wiped out. But clearly we still have those. So it seemed to kill the wrong things. Okay, and also my own favorite evolutionary idea is this one by Gary Larson that says they all died of lung cancer. Okay, so what can we summarize here? That they tell us about God's creativity, because they were part of God's created kinds made on day 6. Incredible designs. I've told you some of the designs they must have had to be so big. But also about the fall. I'll talk about all this next time in the main service, but the fall is why we have judgment. And the judgment include the flood. Man was so wicked that God started over again. And then you got God's providence. God gave us one way to get on to save us from the watery judgment that was going on board the ark, but only 8 people went on the ark. The Apostle Peter says 8 people too, okay? So the New Testament affirms what Genesis tells you. If Genesis wasn't enough, the New Testament also tells you. But it tells you about the gospel in the sense that there was one way to save us from the judgment of the flood. There's also one way to save us from the judgment of the second death. That's through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. That's the connection there. So now I've got a brief time to answer some questions that people have been very patiently waiting for. So how about I can answer some questions for you guys now. Yes, sir. Yes. Leviathan type giant whale, why I think it wasn't is because it seemed to be a river creature. Where it lived, it seemed to be on the river, so it seemed to be something that would come on the land on the river. Whales are in the deep ocean, so we think it probably wasn't a whale. Whale was the biggest creature, but I think it wasn't, and also whales didn't have the armor that the Leviathan seemed to have, okay? So behind you first, okay, in the blue. Well, I mean, the thing is, it wasn't a meteorite is one thing. You're talking about the Chicxulub crater. I talk about that in an article on our website. I do talk about that. But also, it seems that they talk about an element called iridium that's supposed to be the proof of a meteorite impact. But the thing is, not much iridium near that impact site. So if the meteorite left a whole lot of iridium around the world, why isn't it where the meteorite hit, supposedly? So was it a meteorite? And did it do what it claimed to do? So even if there was a meteorite impact, I'd say it would have had to come towards the end of the flood year, during the flood year. So I think there was some bombardment, okay, by things during the year of the flood, but not millions of years ago. But it seems that the meteorite could not have wiped out the dinosaur because they claim the meteorite impact, it blew up a whole lot of dust that blocked off the sunlight and caused a sort of, they call it a nuclear winter sort of thing, so you got sunlight being blocked. But then in case, why does the flowering plants survive? Flowering plants need sunlight. So the meteorite doesn't do what it claimed to do. Now, one of the young ladies there in front of you. Okay, young lady, who's hand up? Go ahead. Well, it said God brought the animals on. It said that God said the animals will come to you. What could have happened? I mean, Noah had about 70 years to build the ark. So a lot of time also to train the animals to domesticate, but also the animals the ark would have had separate rooms and cages and passageways. So just like zoos today can keep tigers and prey animals together because they have them in cages. So somehow the animals would have gone into the separate cages and therefore been protected from other animals. So there were cages on the ark that could stop the animals from getting out. And also, as I say, the biggest one may have been young ones as well, so maybe not quite as dangerous. Yes, sir?
Supposedly the Leviathan, the theory of how it was a whale, it was bigger than the megalodon.
Well, the Bible doesn't really tell you how that it was bigger than a megalodon. But the thing is, megalodons and whales were deep sea creatures, while the Leviathan was seen to be a river creature. If you look in Job 41, Leviathan's a river creature, so it doesn't seem to fit a whale or a megalodon. But it seems to fit a giant crocodile, something that seemed to come on land sometimes. So I don't think a whale would fit. Even though whales and megalodons were big, it doesn't seem to fit the description in Job 41. Maybe a question on this side, maybe? Ooh. Yes, that's your hand or just stretching? Which is quite reasonable, actually, yeah. Yeah, so let's have a look at some of we do have a lot of resources there. I want to explain some of we have some specials on too. I'll explain some of the books we have on special about dinosaurs, which would be interesting. We've got some for all ages, actually. That's the good thing about our material. We have some for the adults and also some for the younger folk as well. I'll just go through a few. Like this one's for very little people. Basically, see the little dinosaur on the big ark. That's quite for younger readers. This is for a bit older, and this is for older, still maybe middle school and above. I think a lot of parents would actually learn a lot from a book like this because it's got stuff that I think most people won't know. And we actually have this is something really nice. We have a pack of dinosaur books. See, this is a special pack which has these 3 books plus a few things like flashcards and comics. So this is actually a nice little pack which is discounted. So we have a few good things available about dinosaurs. Another thing we have is books for other ages too. We also have this video series called the Genesis Academy, which is quite a nice series for Sunday school, homeschooling, 12-part video series on Genesis 1 to 11. It's quite a nice series there. Okay, another book you might like if you want to just know about Christianity Defenses is Christianity for Skeptics. It tells you about why we should trust the Bible, why we believe Jesus rose from the dead, how do you answer other religions like Islam and Hinduism, atheism as a religion. And we also have Exploring Geology with Mr. Hibb. That's actually a special with this one. These two together are a special price for this week only. Okay, so quite a few different things we're offering on special. What else do we have? We have a number of different books for kids and for adults, as I was mentioning before. Let's see if we can find some of these for you. But as I say, if you want to ask me more questions, I didn't say that you can stop the question mode, just so you see Noah was asking questions. So I was going through a few things that might be interesting for you guys to learn a bit more about the science here. For instance, this pack here we're offering as a special. This is sort of for more middle school and high school young adult readers there. It's a book about Anglo-Saxon England, 8th century King Alfred the Great, and seeing a dinosaur among them too. Because it seems that ancient Saxons did see dinosaurs, which you won't hear in the school, but it seemed like they did see dinosaurs. That's an interesting thing to think. And we actually have this pack here, this book here, Creation Astronomy for Kids, if you're interested in the stars and the planets. And that's also part of a special as well. So I'm trying to give you some special ideas. But if no one has any more questions, I'll have a break here. Let you guys have a break. Oh, yes, so go ahead.
It seems like this is awesome information and makes sense and supports the Bible timeline. But it seems like we're kind of on defense when we're talking about the dinosaurs and how they could have. What are the best evidences of a young Earth?
Well, I'd say the dinosaur soft tissues would be. The dinosaur having soft tissues, intact cells, animal protein and DNA is very good evidence of a young, that they weren't around millions of years ago. And the way we find the fossils themselves are evidence of rapid burial by the flood. And I'll talk about that in the next session. So you've got dinosaurs are evidence for the flood and for a relatively young creation and flood. So I think there's good evidence there. Yeah, I think one of the best evidence for the young world is the dinosaur soft tissues, actually. So, yes, sir. That's all.
When I read the Bible, I notice that God made a lot of things that are already fully grown.
Yes, definitely.
So, I've been to Jerusalem and have people that talk about 50 million years and this and that, and they don't understand that when Adam was made, he was fully grown. So
Yeah.
I can imagine the earth being fully materialized.
Yeah, mature. I think mature creation, but not appearance of age. The difference in appearance of age and mature creation. So the earth would not have had fossils when it was created, because fossils are clearly evidence that something was buried. So they wouldn't have had fossils. I think the tree rings would not have had growth rings because there's no history. Growth rings are caused by alternating summer and winter. And since there's no history, there'd be no growth rings in the tree. And Adam and Eve would not have had belly buttons. Because belly buttons are where you connected to your mother, right? The umbilical cord, right? So they had no mother, so therefore no belly buttons. See, Adam and Eve would have been created fully formed and adults because they could understand God's instructions. They were meant to reproduce. They were meant to have children right away. So they were created to be adults. The trees were already created to give fruits. Okay, so you have mature creation, but not appearance of age. So yeah, maturity is what God would have created with. So no fossils when he created, okay. And a lot of the sedimentary rocks that we see were clearly the result of the flood. So those are, yes, sir?
How do we explain the creation of oil and coal? Because scientists say it takes millions of years to create.
Did they time it? Did they time it? They said no one timed it. But in fact, we've actually shown that coal and oil can form very quickly if you have the right conditions. They've done that in the lab. They've actually timed that in the lab. When you have the right conditions, it doesn't take very long. That's been timed. The millions of years has not been timed. They're assuming it, but they haven't proven it. And what we do know from the lab is that if you have the right conditions, you don't need lots of time to form oil and coal. And I think the flood would have provided those conditions by burying lots of plant matter and under lots of mud, which would provide the pressure and the temperature needed to form oil and coal really quickly. And the fact that the coal itself has good evidence that it must have been formed really quickly, because the coal is very, have huge coal seams. The thing is, slowly and gradually you get a whole lot of other gunk mixed in if it was doing slowly and gradually. The fact you have just the coal there is good evidence it's formed quickly. But also you have these Z, or Z you say here in this country, don't you? Z-shaped seams where something goes diagonally through the coal seam. Well, how do you get that unless it's all formed in one motion? You couldn't do this gradually. How do you get the slant building up slowly and gradually? You only get that slant if it's all formed in one motion. So I think you've got very good evidence that it's much younger and formed by the flood. Yes, ma'am.
I know this is a little bit off topic.
Don't worry.
But like maybe in a real brief synopsis, you can tell me your take on aliens.
Sure. I don't think aliens really exist, okay? I'm not talking about angels. I'm talking about these sort of ET type aliens, these biological things. The reason I don't think they exist is because the Earth is created on day 1. The sun and moon and stars were day 4. So the Earth is clearly older than the stars, according to the Bible. Also, Adam fell on Earth. But when Adam fell, the whole creation was cursed. That's what you see in Romans 8. The whole creation was cursed because of Adam's sin, which means that Adam's sin would have resulted in the curse on the Vulcans and the Klingons. You can't escape that. But then how do we get redeemed? Because God incarnated, Jesus Christ, God took on human nature in Jesus Christ on earth, and he became our kinsman redeemer, a fellow human. He was descended from Mary and Adam, okay? So God took on human nature to die for human sin. He didn't take on Vulcan nature to die for Spock's sin. Okay, so the incarnation is unique to Earth, but also the church is collectively the bride of Christ, okay? And God only has one bride, the human bride. He doesn't have a Vulcan bride and a Klingon bride, okay? So there's some theological reasons why aliens would not work. Practically, there's a problem because even getting to a speed of, say, 1/3 of the speed of light takes more energy than the whole Earth generates in a month, okay, in months. Just to get a tiny little spacecraft up to 1/3 of light speed. And 1/3 of light speed will take you 12 years to get to even the nearest star system. But to get that, you've got impossible energy, but also impossible acceleration, because in fact, if you try to turn at a radius, even at the radius of Earth's orbit, you'd be crushed by G-forces. Okay, you'd be totally crushed by the turning at that sort of speed. Or if you crash into a dust grain at that speed, you'd blow up.
Good answer, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, it looks like, yes ma'am, okay. Maybe the last one, so you can raise.
Any scientists become believers after Mount St. Helens erupted?
I couldn't.
And they can see, like, how maybe the Grand Canyon was formed?
Well, I'll talk about Mount St. Helens next time, okay? It's an important thing, but I couldn't tell you specifically, but I think I can tell you generally that plenty of scientists have become believers because of the evidence of creation, yes. Some of my colleagues are among them. Yeah. But thank you for your attention. I'll see you back here at the Sunday school, and I'll turn this off to you.